This is the Accidental Safety Pro, brought to you by Vivid Learning Systems and the Health and Safety Institute. This is episode number 31. My name is Jill James, Vivid's Chief Safety Officer, and today I'm joined by Tony. Tony is the Vice President of Safety Services at Unlimited Safety Solutions in the state of Washington. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you being willing to do this with us, but when we talked previously, you said that your daughter was saying, like, the week before you and I got in touch with each other, hey, Dad, you should do a podcast. And I'm so glad she pushed you. So what was it that she was thinking?
Well, we were talking about safety and, what should she go to college for? And of course, I did not go to college for safety, and I've been meeting a lot of different individuals in the field that have went to college for safety. And I was just kind of telling her it's a good field to get into, and she's like, well, I don't really hear that much about it. And I just said, what do you think is a good way for us to elevate the platform of safety and make it more sexy, which is a really weird word to use, but
I use it all the time for that. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, because it's not a sexy thing, right?
It's
I mean,
not.
like, nobody thinks safety is like, ooh, that's a cool occupation sounding.
Right.
Yeah.
You're always thinking of, the guy or gal hiding, behind a truck somewhere with a clipboard on a construction site. And so she said, what about, if you, post pictures of your Instagram of construction sites, and we can edit it, make it look cool. And then she's like, oh my God, you should get on a podcast. And I'm like, nobody wants to talk to me on a podcast about safety. They don't exist. And then you sent me an email. Yeah, right? And then that's when you contacted me, probably about 4 or 5 days later. So here we go.
it was the universe, I guess.
There we go. The safety gods.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Your daughter and I somehow had a universal connection and decided we got to make this happen for you.
Oh yeah. And I'm excited. I anytime I can talk about safety, it's let's go.
That's awesome. So Tony, like everybody on the Accidental Safety Pro, we ask, like, how'd you get into safety? Because you just said, I didn't go to college to get a degree in safety, but somehow it found you. So would you mind sharing your path? Like, how'd this happen for you?
Oh yeah, no problem. So I joined the Marine Corps at the age of 18, and I joined the Marine Corps, and all I thought about was, I want to go to the Marine Corps. I want to shoot guns, and I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to deploy. So I did that, and I deployed a few times, and I came back off of a deployment, and I was told that I was getting ready to get a promotion. So I was excited, excited about this promotion, and I got promoted, and probably about 20 minutes after I was promoted, they said, okay, congratulations, sir. You are now going to be working with our battalion safety officer. And yes, they didn't ask me. I like to use the phrase voluntoed. I was voluntoed to do it, but it wasn't necessarily working as safety. It was basically sitting in an office and recording all the injuries that we had. So that's how I got my start. And my boss, I mean, that's kind of what she did too. We just kind of waited for the phone to ring, and we put it into, I think it was called the MARTRAC system, and that's how we did it. And we failed miserably at it.
And it was reactive safety too. You were just waiting for something bad to happen.
Very reactive, and it's and there's a lot of safety programs that are like that today.
True. Yeah, right. So what happened next? How long were you in that role where you're waiting for the phone to ring or somebody to walk in the office?
So I sat in that role. I sat in that role for probably about 6 months.
Okay.
And I start realizing that I needed to get out of the office, and I needed to take a little bit more initiative instead of just going what my job description said. My job description was, it was take out the trash, wait for the phone to ring, wait for an email. And so what I started doing was I started setting up classes and started kind of investigating the injuries and incidents that
Mm.
we were having,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean it, which I mean this is almost almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to say that that was almost unheard of um, in the unit that I was in. They're like, what are you doing? We need to talk about weapons. We need to talk about PT. We need, which
Yeah.
is exercise. We need to talk about all this different stuff, but we're not going to talk about safety. We want you to
Safety. Mm-hmm.
basically just get your box of crayons and go in the corner and color.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I
Wait for
pushed,
something to happen. Yeah.
right, and wait for something to happen. So I pushed and pushed and pushed, and I kind of got into the ears of one of our senior leadership members, and he said, "You know what, Tony or Taylor, Sergeant Taylor, you got the
Mm-hmm.
green light. Go at
Mm-hmm.
it."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. I went at
Wow.
it, and I started showing up. I started giving classes. I started looking at some of the leading indicators of why these injuries was happening, and
Mm-hmm.
just started to basically be the face of safety in our organization, and we were able to decline our injuries by 26% that
Wow.
next year. Um, so,
And
which
you
was
did you yeah, you did that by just teaching yourself.
yes, I taught myself, and I taught myself. This was before Google was prevalent. I would go on
Uh-huh.
AOL and just look at what am I supposed to be doing as a safety officer,
Uh-huh.
and so yeah, but
I know AOL.
yes, oh
Some
yeah,
of our listeners will not, but
but that's all good, right?
wow. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, that's interesting. So self-taught, and so you were actually able to show value in that by decreasing. What did the Marine Corps say to that? Were they like keep going, or let's give them some more stuff, or what happened?
Oh yeah. Well, as you know, the military is always it's always changing, and jobs are always changing around.
Mm-hmm.
I went after I had that assignment, probably about a year and a half. I then went to Japan and kind of went along with kind of my original duties, working in infantry, working as, being a truck driver, which
Mm-hmm.
I loathe. Uh, and then I got out. I got out of the Marine Corps, and I basically came back home to Indiana, and I just felt this need to for me to be able to kind of get back into society and kind of be able to help. And the best way
Mm-hmm.
that I found out that that was possible was to go and be a firefighter. So I took a job as a firefighter for the Department of Defense, and that's kind of how I ended up here in Washington State. Worked as a firefighter. Worked my way up from firefighter to lead firefighter to captain, and then fire prevention. And the reason why I ended up in fire prevention was because we would go and do the whole somebody gets injured at a job site. Go and pick that person up, whether
Mm-hmm.
they're alive or not, and
Mm-hmm.
basically get the body bags, and then we would go back to the fire station and play Xbox, and nobody would think of it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
me, I would be thinking, I wonder why that happened. What could they have done differently?
Yeah, it's kind
And
of like exactly what you had done with the Marine Corps.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes, and I loved my job as being a firefighter, but it was so reactive, and
Yeah.
it just body after body, and
Yeah.
that's kind of why I ended up going into fire prevention and safety, to help combat that. And I felt like I was very instrumental in helping the Department of Defense with their safety program as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, safety and fire prevention.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting. So how long were you in the fire prevention role?
I was in fire prevention for about 8.5 years.
Wow.
Yep, for about eight and a
Yeah.
half years, and I was poached by by a company out in the civilian sector.
Uh-huh.
Uh, after 8.5 years, and
Yeah.
and I was working in the hospital setting for quite a bit there in Tacoma, and I fell in love with that job as well because you're basically protecting um, you know the patients who are vulnerable. Most of them are non-ambulatory,
Yeah.
meaning that they can't move. So I mean,
Yep.
it was a very interesting job, and definitely something that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I've just been thinking recently that I wanted to be able to have a safety professional on the podcast who worked in healthcare and actually put out a request on LinkedIn to see if anybody was in that field or wanted to make a referral because we haven't, my goal is to continually represent lots of different industries. And I thought, gosh, we don't have healthcare yet. It's really a growing industry. It'd be fun to talk to a safety professional in healthcare. And I've done some work as a safety professional in healthcare in my career. And now this is so great that you have too. So when you were in
Wow,
the
that's the
hospital,
universe.
I know it is. It really is. And so when you were in the hospital setting, were you using, did they hire you for the fire prevention piece? Were you doing lots of employee safety stuff, or sort of what elements? Because I mean, hospitals have a lot of different safety elements.
Right.
What were you working on?
Right. I was hired. I was hired because of my fire background, and also the fact that I knew somebody that worked at the hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
he was the one that picked me up. He was my advocate, for getting me in that space, because it was something that I had always wanted to do, was to work in a hospital,
Yeah.
and yeah, I was mainly hired to give classes because that's kind of what's near and dear to my heart is being able to teach because you know it's I've sat through probably in my career I've sat through maybe 1,000 plus different PowerPoints. I sat through a bunch of different lectures. I mean, even as probably last week, sitting through it and just
Mm-hmm.
doodling and just bored out of my mind because
Mm-hmm.
the material, I mean, it's good material, very competent instructors, but I was basically bought in to make it more lively so that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sitting in front of a group clicking a PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So you're making it engaging. So what sort of training were you doing at the hospital?
doing everything from working, life safety 101,
Yeah.
doing fire drills. Fire drills was a big was a big deal working for a hospital because you have maybe 2,000 people in one building, a couple
Mm-hmm.
hundred people in one building. It's really hard to get those people out, within the 2 minutes that you need to be able to get them out in.
Sure, and we're
So
talking about employees and patients and guests.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of my training was mainly egress. How do we get these patients
Mm-hmm.
out of a building in a timely manner?
Hmm. So, gosh, that's a lot. That's a big background in fire prevention work and life, and life safety, like you're talking about. I'm wondering for people listening who maybe don't know a lot about life safety or even fire prevention, are there some things that you'd like to share just about that, or misconceptions or myths, or gosh, if I had a magic wand, I wish everybody would do or would know, you know, whatever it is in that field.
Right. I would
Yeah.
I would say, as being a firefighter, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about is how hard it is.
Mm.
It's really hard being a firefighter. I mean, ever since I was a child, I wanted to be a firefighter. I thought those dudes and gals, they were so cool. They would have all the barbecues and they would have the big red truck, and
Yeah.
I like to eat, right,
Uh-huh.
and I like trucks.
Uh-huh.
So I thought they were cool,
You were
and
thinking of the community impact part.
yes, and
Yeah.
that's
Uh-huh.
it, and that's
Uh-huh.
it. That was all I was thinking about was that
Mhm.
part.
Mhm.
And one thing that I didn't realize was, being a firefighter, or being in the fire service. I mean, there's a lot of liability, and a lot of that liability lies on your family. You're away from your family. For me, I worked 2 days on, 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
half of the time I was at work, and
Yeah.
I missed a lot of different activities. Like my daughter's first steps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I missed a lot. I missed a lot, and a lot of things that we don't think about when we're thinking about going in that career path is, you're meeting your patients on the worst days of their lives,
Yeah.
and that takes a toll out on you. And that's stuff that I never forget. You never forget some of the back calls that you went on,
Yep.
and that's thinking of that stuff and having that stuff in my brain and having that imagery is
Mm-hmm.
what drives me as a safety professional. Because you know yesterday I'm telling somebody, hey, you need to put your eye protection on, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, nothing's gonna happen, we're just doing
Mm-hmm.
punch lists, it's all good. And I'm like, well, I can tell you a story. You want it's story time. Let's talk about this now.
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
firefighters, and I think that's kind of what helped me, is being able, to have those stories to say, no, I think you're wrong because of this or because of that.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's so true. That's so true. I feel exactly the same way. And then sometimes we get, because we have so many stories and they're not like happy ending stories,
Right.
that people are like, gosh, like, is everything that you have to talk about have to do with maiming or somebody dying? And my my brother spent over 20 years as a paramedic in major metropolitan areas, and he and I happened to be together yesterday and with another friend, and the two of us just started talking about some of our stories of fatalities that he responded to, or serious injuries he responded to, and fatalities or serious injuries that I responded to. He as a paramedic, me as a when I was with OSHA. And our friend was like, man, you guys have so many stories. And we both said, yeah, I mean, that was a big part of the job. And you're so right, Tony. They'd never leave your mind.
Right.
And you view and walk through the world differently because you see something that is somehow linked to that story, that situation, and you're right back there.
Right.
And that's where this whole prevention piece comes in, because you've seen the worst of it, so you want to talk about it so it doesn't happen to somebody. and
Right.
and so I think we get a bad rap sometimes, those of us with this large collection of stories, where people go, do you have to only just talk about all this terrible stuff?
Right. You can't talk about unicorns and rainbows all the time, right?
Right. Yeah,
But
the answer is no.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard, trying to find that balance, and I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
safety professionals would agree with me. It's hard to find that balance because you don't want to be, that safety professional that's running around like Chicken Little. The sky's falling, the sky's
Yeah, yeah,
falling.
yeah,
You
right,
know,
exactly.
you kind of want to be positive.
Mhm.
At least
Mhm.
some of the time.
Exactly. So you kind of develop this cadence. At least I have in over 20 years of doing this. It's like, okay, when am I going to drop that story? Is this a place? Is this a hill to die on right here? And is this a situation that needs this story to be deployed, or are we just kind of going to let this one? We're going to correct in a different way, or
Oh
not
yeah.
bring it up at all. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. So, what else about life safety? Or you had mentioned fire drills, but what other life safety things do you think you wish people knew, since you've did that job for so long? Maybe somebody who's just starting out in the field is trying to figure out, like, what should I do? What should I focus on?
I would I would say I guess, like, if I can give my own self advice for when I first start
Yeah.
looking into the code,
Yeah.
as we call it, I would say don't get intimidated by all the numbers, and do your research. You thoroughly want to do your research. I wouldn't necessarily take that book and make a whole highlight a bunch of different things and then go out to whoever you're working with and just start quoting that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely don't want to be that professional. You want to know the code, you want to know the information, but what I think is more importantly is knowing the people. You want to
Yeah.
know the people. You want to capture your audience. You want to be able to, to have that street cred that we talk about in
Mm-hmm.
safety. You want to be able to have that, instead of just being that person that's out, reciting the code. NFPA 101 tells us that.
Uh-huh.
No, you don't want to be that person. You want to know your stuff, but more importantly, you want to know your people, and you want to build up that trust. And one thing that I've just started doing was going to different seminars that they've had. I've used to be kind of like, no, I'm not going to go to that stuff and get all
Mm-hmm.
nerded out on safety. But
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that I definitely would tell my younger self. Hey, you need to go to those seminars because you sit down and you start networking with different people. You're gonna learn something.
Yeah.
There's always
Mm-hmm.
something you can learn from everybody. So
Yeah.
definitely getting in the code. Definitely getting subscriptions to all the different magazines, and trying to find new and
Yeah.
innovative ideas to be able to project everything that you're learning, and talking to the professionals that are that have been doing it, that are that have been doing it, that have been in the field, that know it. But more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, what I think what helped me was, for being a younger guy in the fire prevention field, was I was working with individuals that had already retired from the fire service,
Mm-hmm.
and you couldn't tell them nothing. I mean, they knew
Mm-hmm.
it all.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that that I kind of tried to make sure that I did was not to necessarily look at things with that the old lens, or it's never going to get fixed. This is just the way that it is.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial, so it's just like one of those deals. Like, no, I get it. You guys been doing it this way for this many years.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a way to simplify it. There's got to be a way that we can make this easy, because I'm not understanding it. So that means that there's probably
Somebody else.
somebody
Yeah.
else isn't understanding it. How
Yeah.
can we fix it?
Sounds like that's how you've approached your career all along. You're not accepting the status quo and you're looking ahead and like, okay, what more can I do here? How can we do this? And it sounds like that's what you did with your job. So you were in the
I try.
hospital. Yeah.
I try. I mean, how everybody tells you, think outside the box, think outside the
Yeah.
box, or let's think outside the box. I always tell people, I don't think outside the box because I was never in it. And
Excellent.
yes.
Yeah. Excellent. That's great. Good analogy. So you were in the hospital for a while, the hospital setting. What happened with your career after that? Or,
Well, I worked in a hospital,
mm-hmm.
and that's kind of like, after working in a hospital for a while, I migrated to Indiana, and I was working with a couple different contractors as far as construction, and I just got fascinated, and I like fell in love with construction because
Hmm.
those are all very hard working
Yeah.
individuals. They work really hard, but they are under a tremendous amount of pressure to get the job done. And for lack of better words or better terms, I mean, safety is one of those things to where you know I don't think that it's always placed as high as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that I carefully choose my words, because I got a lot of friends that are construction workers. I don't want them coming for me.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah.
but I don't think we hold it as high in regard as we should. And one thing that I thought about,
Hmm.
I was thinking about this the other day. I was kind of walking through one of our construction sites, and I saw someone had um, the word organ donor on a hard hat.
Oh.
Yeah, and I just, and I asked him about it, and he,
Yeah.
he was like, what's the matter? He's thinking that I was getting upset with him,
Yeah.
but I was not upset with him. I was more upset with our industry. Like,
Yeah.
there's not too many jobs out there where you go to work. My wife is in real estate. She's not going to go to work and write, organ donor on a name tag, right? I
Right.
just, I get it, but at the same time, I think we need to do a better job, and that's kind of, why
Mm.
I've migrated more to construction now, is because I feel like there's a great need.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is, having those words and thinking about the industry in that regard is such a throwback to like the Industrial Revolution.
Right, right.
I mean, when the expectation was that a certain amount of people just would simply die on a job project. It's like that iconic picture of
Oh
the
God.
New York, you know what I'm talking about, the New York
Yes.
City iron workers sitting on that I-beam,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and
Yeah.
knowing that everybody, people needed work so badly then that they were literally waiting to replace someone who fell so they could have a job.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so organ donor. I mean, they probably didn't even have anything like they didn't have organ, but yeah, the industry can't wear that moniker.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And every
yeah,
time I see that picture, I just, oh my God.
right.
I think of the phrase, we've always done it this way. Every time I see that
Mm,
picture.
wow, that's a
Uh,
good phrase. That's a good caption for that photo.
yeah, I actually put it on my LinkedIn a couple
Hmm.
weeks ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. So, construction industry. Hmm. So you've been doing that for a while. I know from seeing your LinkedIn profile that you are also a boxer, and so I'm just sort of curious to know, when did boxing come into your life, and how has lessons learned from boxing impacted, if it has, your safety career?
Well, I've been a boxer since probably the age of, I would say probably the age of 12.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, since the age of 12, I was a big stocky kid, and actually I was too big to play Pop Warner football. They told me I was too heavy, so I went to the boxing gym,
Uh
to
huh.
lose a little bit of weight so that I can play. And then I fell in love with boxing, and
Uh huh.
I kind of been doing it ever since. But boxing, I've been boxing for a while, and um, I turned professional. I turned pro in the year 2008, and I boxed for a few years. I was a
Wow.
much better amateur than professional. Um, I was already had my career, and I had kids, and I had a
So,
wife, and
so you've got a job and a family, and you're a professional boxer.
and I was firefighting at the time. Yes,
Whoa.
yes,
Yeah, that sounds intense, Tony.
it's a weird combination. So,
You
uh,
might be an adrenaline junkie.
I think so. I think so, and that's so bad. It's so bad because I'm a safety guy, right?
It just keeps you moving forward in safety and
Oh
making things
yeah.
better. Yeah,
Oh
you're
yeah.
not you're not sitting on your laurels. You're moving things forward.
Yeah, but one thing that I can say that it taught me is being able, to get punched in the face for a living, and that the punches are coming. You're taking
Hmm.
those calculated risks, but it's just, you know, how many punches are you willing to take? And then once you get punched, what are you going to do after you get punched? Are you going to keep taking the punches? You
Yeah.
know, and it also helps you with dealing with the wins and dealing with the loss, because I've been knocked down before.
Hmm.
I'm proud of the fact that I've been knocked down before. I've gotten up a bunch of
Hmm.
times, and I think that's kind of like not just in the safety field, but in life. Period. You're gonna get hit, but you have to keep getting back up. That's the
Yeah.
measure of the of a person's character, is
Yeah.
how many times they get up. But
Yeah.
so I did that for quite a while,
Hmm.
and um, luckily my wife was able to step in and say, "Listen." She actually saw me on the news one day, and I was basically what she calls it, playing on I-5 there. There was a big car collision,
Hmm.
and she could see me on the news, right? Doing my thing, and I'm thinking, hey man, she's gonna be so proud of me when I get home. I'm gonna steak dinner. She's gonna be like, oh, look at my husband out there
And
whipping
this
it
is for,
on.
and this is for as a firefighter, not in
Yes,
the box. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, as a
Hmm.
firefighter. So,
Hmm.
so I'll connect it in a second.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I, uh, so I get home, and she's just like, honey, uh, I I don't know what to say. She's like, you go to work, and you're putting out fires, and you're on the freeway with cars whipping and whizzing around you, and then you go to a boxing gym, and she's you have a very dangerous career and a very dangerous extracurricular activity. Something
Mm-hmm.
has got to change.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I said, you know what, you're right, and I kind of gave up boxing.
It sounds like she became what wasn't it, Adrian with Rocky? Like, come on, Rock, it's got to be a hard stop. I'm sick of seeing this.
Yes, yes,
Right?
yes. And when we watched that movie,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, Adrian, let him keep going. Stop! Don't take it away from him. Let him keep going. But yeah, it was definitely a smart decision. Definitely a
Uh-huh.
smart decision because, going back to the whole safety thing,
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of my friends that I grew up with, and this is during that time where it was up there as far as the numbers to where, I would be talking to somebody. This is back in the MySpace days. I would be
Mm-hmm.
talking to somebody on MySpace, a boxer, and then I'll see him on TV, and he'll be knocked out or he'll be in a hospital. One of my buddies, good buddies, he passed away from complications of injuries that he suffered in the ring. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just not enough protection, not
Mm-hmm.
enough protection, and it
Yeah.
just wasn't worth it at the end.
Yeah, yeah. So do you still box recreationally now?
Uh, kind of. I'll maybe shadow box when nobody's looking in my
Yeah, yeah.
office,
Uh-huh.
when we're printing out the OSHA logs or something like that. I'll do a couple punches in celebration, but no, not really. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great story.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun. There was one other thing that I'm curious to ask you about before we keep moving on with your career that I also saw on your LinkedIn profile is you had some interaction with an elephant. So, does this have something to do with boxing? Did you
No,
box an elephant? Yeah, right.
no, I didn't.
What's
All
the
right.
elephant story, Tony?
I I actually forgot about this story. I forgot about this story until probably not too long ago.
Hmm.
I was sitting in a conference room, and it was kind of a heated discussion. And I don't like heated discussions. I like everybody to kind of get along, and I like
Yeah.
everybody to be happy. I feel like that's kind of like my job as a safety guy is to be the wellness person as well.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
started.
Healthy conversations.
Oh yeah. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Hey guys, do you guys know that I am in fact an elephant stampede survivor?" and everybody just kind of looked
Everybody
at me.
stops. Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're like, "What?" They couldn't believe it. I was like, "Yeah, I'm not lying. I even called my mom without no coaching or anything like that, and I was like, "Hey, what was that one traumatic thing that happened when I was 6 years old?" And she was just like, "Oh." She was like, and this is, I mean, we're sitting in like a board meeting, and she goes, "Oh, that's when the elephants stomp your beep 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 beep." It just like kind of went off talking about
Uh-huh.
it, and I'm like, "Mom, I'm at work," and she's like, "Oh my God." So anyways, and I kind of did that to kind of get that street cred too, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So what happened was I was 6 years old, either 6 or 7, and we're at I don't know why somebody thought would be a good idea, but they figured that they would bring the circus to the neighborhood,
Oh.
and so they have elephants, they have all these different carnivore rides, and
Mm-hmm.
and of course I'm like, hey, I want to ride an elephant, so I go and I ride it, and I tell my mom, I say, hey, it's really hot outside. Don't you think the elephants, probably need some water? I don't see any water around. And she's like, oh, don't
Mm-hmm.
worry about it. It'll be all
Mm-hmm.
right. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think I mentioned it to one of my aunts as well. And
Mm-hmm.
everything's okay. And then next thing you know, I hear the noise that elephants make. Like big old loud
Oh.
noise, like a
Uh-huh.
trumpet,
Uh-huh.
and there's hundreds of people running around, and I am underneath a gate, and an elephant foot is standing on top of me, and it just
No.
keeps walking. Yep, yep, yep. It happened, and went to the hospital, got patched up, and I was good to go.
Oh my gosh. How did you get under this gate? Were you trying to slide under there to bring the elephant some water or what?
No, I was under the gate. I was just watching. I was just
Oh,
just kind of being a spectator. It was one of those gates that kind of keep you kind of like a crowd control gate.
yeah, uh-huh.
So yeah, I was just looking at it, and it was cinder blocks was actually that was holding the gate up as the
Hmm.
elephant stumped my body. But it didn't. It wasn't like 100%. I would say partially. I don't know, maybe like
Yeah.
1% of the elephant's foot was on my body.
Oh
But
my gosh.
yeah, it
Do
was.
you remember being scared?
Yeah, it happened so quick that
Uh-huh.
that it was just like, oh my god, what's happening? Oh my god, that's an elephant. Like,
So in safety, when we think of crushed by and caught between hazards, I had really never pictured nor used the description elephant
right.
before, but it happened to you.
Yes, yes, which is really weird.
It is. So did that disrupt the negative conversation in that meeting that day?
Yeah, it was funny because I mean everybody kind of I mean it kind of decreased their productivity as well, but that's all everybody was talking about, for the rest of the day was how I got stumped by an elephant, which I mean sometimes I don't know, I'm willing to do that,
Uh-huh.
be that person to kind of take the heat, especially when it's getting really hot. So
Yep. Right. That's funny.
yep.
So back to your career. You were in the construction trades and doing that for a while. So what's next on your what happened next in your career?
Uh, I think I'm gonna stay with construction.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna stay
Okay.
with construction because there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to do, and um, there's a lot of work to do. Of course, there's a lot of policies
Mhm.
written, but we're not applying it. We're not applying it at all in the construction
Mm.
industry, and I'll be bold to say that I can look outside my window right now, where they're building houses, and you got crafts personnel on top of roofs without fall protection,
Yeah.
and you go and you talk to a lot of these different companies, that have subcontracted out. They're like, okay, it's old hat. So
Yep.
there's a lot of
Mhm.
work to be done.
Mhm. Mhm. Agreed. Agreed. I mean, just that example that alone that you're using right now with fall protection on roofs and roofers. I mean, anyone who's got any sort of a trained safety eye. I mean, lack of fall protection is not uncommon
Oh
to
yeah,
see.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's really
Yeah.
bad, and it's not, and that's why I feel like it's it it's meant for me to be in construction, because once you talk to a lot of the people out there on the field,
Mhm.
um, and you explain to them how easy it is to protect themselves.
Mhm.
They don't forget it, and you explain to them why it's important. They don't forget it, but a lot of people, they just have never, nobody has never taken the time to actually explain it to them. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's it, Tony. I mean, if you don't know there's a way to protect yourself and you think, well, I just kind of have to do, this and this or contort my body in this position or I'm only going to be in this situation for a little bit, but you didn't know that there's actually a tool, a thing, a method, what would you do? Like how would you know any better?
right, right.
Yeah. And
Especially
so
how easy it is these days. It's so easy to set up fall
yeah.
protection.
Yeah, right. And so lights kind of go off on people's heads when you're explaining like this. It doesn't have to be like this.
Right, right. It
Yeah,
doesn't. It does not have to be like that, and
yeah,
and I think it's all in the delivery.
yeah.
How you educate people. I mean, because I've seen people go out and they're screaming. Yeah, they're gonna do what you tell them to do, but
Mhm,
at the
mhm.
end of the day, they're gonna go back to those old habits because that's what they know. If you take the time to teach them how to do it correctly and also explain to them what will happen if they don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
As far as, sometimes you got to get morbid with them and
Yeah.
let them know that you care about them. I'm really
Yeah.
big on that. Let my people know, hey man, I care about you. This is why I'm correcting you, because I care about you. And I feel like in order, to get into their heads, you need to go through their hearts first.
Yeah. So say more about that because I know you feel passionate about not being the bad safety guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and when I was in the military, it's all about, um, not necessarily all about, but it's perceived that you have to have, this bravado. You have to get things done, and you have to. Sometimes you got to get your point across, with yelling, and I
Mm-hmm.
believe there's a time and place for everything. But when you're dealing, with safety, and you're dealing with people in general, I think it's important, to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds really simple, and this is a conversation that my daughters and I have all the time, is be kind. I think that that's important. You need to be kind to people, um,
Mm-hmm.
in order, not just to get your point across, but because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm When I go on a construction site, and I think this is because, and I'm bringing this up because, I feel like I am kind, to a lot of our people out in the field. When I go, to a construction site, I don't have to worry about our people, not all the time, but I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
worry about our people hiding things from me.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, they're like, hey, Tony, let me show you this.
Yeah.
Or did you get my text? And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But they're
Uh-huh.
willing to show me that stuff because I've built that trust with them, and I'm being kind to them, and I'm saying things like, I care about your safety,
Yeah.
I care about you going home, to your kids, and using saying things like, okay, I know your wife's name is Janet, and using that stuff just to be able to
Mm-hmm.
like get
Mm-hmm.
it to sink in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's important. I think that is what's important, is making it personal.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tony. And I think that it's also it's sort of that you were talking about street cred and the things that we do as safety professionals to get a buy-in from employees, to say, hey, I'm willing to do what you do, or so that we can have some commonality there. But I think just as important is what you're talking about right now, is that being kind and knowing them and knowing that you've got their back. And yeah, and it goes both ways then.
Oh yeah.
It becomes reciprocal. That's cool. I think that's where the magic happens that we're able to do with our work.
Yep.
Yeah. You and maybe your daughter pushed you into this one, but I recently saw a pretty funny but poignant YouTube video that you did, that it looks, I think it was featured in the American Society of Safety Professionals magazine as well.
Uh
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's hear the story behind that, because this is a piece of being kind, is what you were portraying in that YouTube video, and also I want to know, were your girls instrumental in you doing that?
Yes. Yes, they were. So I saw that OSHA had the Safe and Sound campaign, and I was kind of going through the list of different avenues that you can take to take to your personnel to promote this event.
Hmm.
And I was just kind of like, okay, I don't want to come up with a new policy. We
Hmm.
got enough of those.
That collects dust on it. Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
don't
Uh-huh.
want to do that. I
Uh-huh.
don't want to do a PowerPoint. I love teaching, but what can I do, to make them laugh but still get the point across? What
Yeah.
can I do to kind of take them, away from the construction site?
Hmm.
So I went around the office and I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a safety video. You
Hmm.
guys want to do it? And then they're like, nope, 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 nope. I'm good. I don't want to do it. I'm shy, or I got better things to do.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, oh man, okay. So I came home and I started telling my kids about it, and like, oh yeah, we'll do it. And we came up with this concept, and basically it was like, let's make fun of dad concept, because
He's a safety nerd.
yeah, because I am, right? I mean, my kids, my girls, they are, You'll see my girls. They have their wrists. They have wrist pads. They have elbow pads. They have
Mm-hmm.
their knee pads. They
Mm-hmm.
wear their helmet. You'll
Mm-hmm.
usually hear my wife or myself yelling at them, "Hey, put your hard hat on!" And
Mm-hmm.
even the neighbors' kids. We don't discriminate, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
So and
Yep.
sometimes, like in the video, sometimes, I'll stop and I'll see workers out, and I'll not see them having or not see them wearing their eye protection, and I keep a trunk full of it, or
Mm-hmm.
whether safety vest. Here you go, buddy. Here's the safety vest. And in that
Mm-hmm.
video, um, they were doing everything perfect. So I thought that that would be a good opportunity to kind of highlight the positive side of it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my girls, both of my girls were in the video, and my son. My son, he actually produced it and filmed it. He's a film producer, Dallin
Oh.
Taylor Promotions. Yeah,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
So now that we're talking about it, people are going to be like, "How do we find this video? What's the title of it?" I can't remember, Tony.
It is called "Be Safe, Okay."
Be safe, okay. And then ASSP, I think, featured it in 2018,
That's
right?
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And so just to give our listeners a little visual, the video starts out with, Tony's in bed sleeping, alarm goes off in the morning, and he's like, oh, ready to get up, and Adam hits the alarm, and right next to your bed is a caution cone. And I'm like, it got me laughing right away. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be funny. And it was poignant, and he really did stop at a job site and talk to people who are doing their work right. And so it takes you in a couple of minutes kind of through Tony's day, and it was really well done. It was funny, but instructive as well.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And yeah,
Yeah.
and the point behind it was, one thing that I was trying to get through was, yeah, you want to be safe at work, and yes, you want to be safe at home, but there's no
Mm-hmm.
difference. It's all
Yeah.
together. If you're safe at home, and you're practicing the same, wearing your PPE, looking at the different risks that you're taking, you're going to do the same thing at work, and
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. Your kids are going to want to do the right thing if you start them early, and putting on their PPE. And the little girl in there, my daughter that played
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody's calling her the skateboard girl.
Yeah.
um, we get on her all the time about, wearing her PPE. And, there's been a couple different conversations that we've had, with her on, why it's important. And she's also able to now go and talk to the neighbors about, them wearing their hard hats, and,
Mm-hmm.
and educating them. And I think that it's important that, that translates over to the workforce. And,
Yeah.
there's too many kids getting injured. There's too many adults getting injured at work as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. That's a fun story. I'm glad that you did that video. Thank you for that.
I get teased
That's a
about
good one.
it all the
Yeah.
time. Oh my God.
I
Yeah.
bet you do. I bet you do. So you've been in the safety profession now for how long, Tony? Did you say 20
I would I
years?
would say I would say probably about a total of 17.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
So yeah, so people who are listening who are maybe just getting started, kind of reflecting on what you've learned so far, are there particular best practices or things that pieces of advice that you'd like to give people?
I kind of like earlier. I would say, um, no matter what industry you're in, there's always a compliance element to that industry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would always, tell somebody that's in that generation of new safety professionals, yes, stick and know and understand compliance,
Yeah.
but you always want to shoot above and beyond compliance. You always want to have in your head, what can I do, or what measures can I take to make the worker safe? Not what can I do to please an inspector.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was also kind of one of the mistakes that I made earlier on in my career. When I was walking around with my stupid little clipboard, writing
Mm-hmm.
everybody up, was
Mm-hmm.
they weren't in compliance, and I would write
Yeah.
it up. So that's one thing I would do. Again, the continuing education. Um, that's huge. All of the
Yeah.
different laws and codes, they change pretty often, um, and school. That's one thing that I think is important, is to take advantage of the fact that health and safety is offered in university curriculum now, and I think that's actually that's a big piece, because
Mm-hmm.
you get people like me that kind of got feel promoted to being the safety professional. you
Yeah.
know there's a lot of times that I'll have I have certain mentor or mentees right now that I won't know something stuff that I should know, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'll shoot them a message, hey, what's the answer to this, or what does your textbook say about this? You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? So it's almost
Yep.
like my generation leaning on their generation. So I would say that's a good way to keep yourself marketable, is knowing what you're talking about.
Right, right. Yeah, knowing you don't know it all. And
Right.
I think something that you said just a little bit ago was, you were that safety cop for a while and you learned that wasn't the right thing to do, and it
Yes.
goes it goes, and I think that's something for people who are in our profession, well, and frankly anywhere. I mean, this is like life and growing, right? You make mistakes, you learn from them, or you try something and you're like, that wasn't the right way to do it. It was like you said with boxing, you get knocked down but you got back up again,
Oh yeah.
and you kept going and you kept going and kept improving and improving. And I think that's what it is with our career and safety for certain, but also just life in general, in any career, where it's not where we're going to have victories and do everything exactly right. We're not going to get it right all the time, but it's what you do in those moments, right?
Right. You can't get stuck
Yeah.
in your ways. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. So as we start to round our time out together today, Tony, I want to go back to that conversation you started with, where you're giving your daughter advice about college and like what fields she could go into, and you two are talking about safety, and don't forget it's an option. I'm wondering, when you're thinking about that, what do you think we as professionals can do to lift up and encourage, particularly minorities, including women, to choose safety? Like, what can we all be working on?
Honestly, that's a good question. I think that you're doing it. I think that you're doing it. By having a podcast. I haven't heard of too many safety podcasts, but you know, getting to the minorities, and actually letting them know, hey, we're out here, we exist, and we're making safety sexy, right? We talked about that earlier, making
Yeah,
safety
right.
sexy, because safety is boring. Safety is boring. I mean, back when I started, I had to be voluntold. Nobody wanted that job. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing cool about being in safety, and
Mm-hmm.
nine times out of ten, if you're in safety, you were, you're doing admin, you're sweeping floors, you're doing this and you're doing that. But I think it's important to let everybody know, just like I told my daughter, I said, hey, you need to understand that once you're a safety professional, or if you choose to go that route, you are one of the most important people out there on the job site. And it's not because you're high and mighty, but
Mm-hmm.
you're in charge of the most important asset of a company, and that's the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can push that, and we can kind of get away from the boring safety stuff, the boring safety stand downs,
Yeah.
and we target those groups. One thing that I'm seeing right now that I am in love with is I see on LinkedIn, I see on YouTube, I see all over the place that there's young professionals, young safety professionals. There's black, Spanish, um, all these different nationalities. The
Yeah.
females in safety. That
Mm-hmm.
is so cool. I love it. I
Mm-hmm.
was on the construction site the other day, and I came across an individual. She had on a pink hard hat. I thought that was so cool. I thought that was so cool. And I think that we need to keep that momentum going. And I think we're
Mm-hmm.
going in a good direction. I think we're going in a positive direction. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
definitely would say, keep market
Yeah.
those issues just like we market everything else, because it is important.
Yeah.
And it is a great job. It's the best job that I've ever had. I wouldn't change it for anything.
That's so great to hear. That's so great to hear. And I think that our our profession is just evolving right now. I mean, it really it's an opportune time for a lot of change to be happening with our baby boomers retiring out of the profession and more industries getting more engaged with safety. There's more opportunities for it, and it's a STEM practice, and it's something for us to be talking with our kids about, with yeah, as we're mentoring people, like you said. I think that's really important.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. I there
Hmm.
was I worked for a job. I was on the job one day, and there was a foreman, one of the supervisors. His daughter goes to Bloomington IU, and he was saying, that she was getting ready to cross over into safety, and would I mind, maybe sitting down and talking to her about it, and we actually did kind of like a ride along, and it was so
Oh, that's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, it was so cool seeing like her face like light up, from out there walking on the construction site, and giving the
Huh.
guys and girls high fives out there, and just kind of doing a deep dive into all of the different safe work practices, and
Yeah.
just kind of talking about safety in general. It was so cool to kind of see another generation
Hmm.
appreciate it, as
Yeah.
much as I appreciate it.
Well, what a good tip, Tony. I mean, I think that's a good tip, that, job shadowing and safety, we don't really think about that. I think that's great. I mean, and that's maybe something more of us could do, is make those opportunities available for a job shadow, even if it's for, a day or a half a day, just to open up someone's eyes to the possibility that it's a career.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
agree.
that's excellent.
And an actual real job shadow, not the deal where it's like, okay, go file all these papers and
Yeah, 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 yeah. Not like how you started out with waiting for the injury to come in the door, and I'm going to put it on the 300 log
right. Yep.
or whatever it was. Yeah, right, exactly. Well, Tony, as we close today, I want to say thanks to your daughter for encouraging you to do a podcast, and somehow it all connected, the dots connected, and so shout out to Tony's daughter. Thanks for encouraging your dad to try something new, in addition to the YouTube, and it sounds like they got you on Instagram too with safety. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Tony, thank you so much for being a guest today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I greatly appreciate it. Just like I said, anytime I can talk about safety, I'll do it in a heartbeat.
Hmm. Thank you. And thank you all so much for joining in and listening today. And thank you for the work that you all do to make sure your workers, including your temporary workers, make it home safe every day. If you'd like to have a conversation about this episode or previous episodes, join the Accidental Safety Pro community page on Facebook. The community page is just for us safety pros to share our insights, reflections, and generally help one another out. It's a page just for us. Special thanks to Will Moss, our podcast producer. You can listen to all of the episodes at vividlearningsystems.com or subscribe in the podcast player of your choosing. You can also listen from our other Facebook page, the Accidental Safety Pro Podcast, and can find us on YouTube. If you have a suggestion for a guest, including if it's you, please contact me at social@vividlearningsystems.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.